Hello and welcome to today's video. Today we're looking at another Atramentis ink, part of my Atramentis month here on my channel. If you're not watching this in April 2023, go back and check out some of the other Atramentis reviews. These are really interesting inks. The one we are looking at today is this. This is Isaac Newton. This is from the Science line of inks that they produce, and the color is fog gray. I believe it's supposed to be fog gray, not frog gray, as the label there says. And of course, Isaac Newton, they're getting the German spelling. We're going to look at this ink on a couple of different kinds of paper, do some sort of little tests and things, and yeah, just have a bit of a chat about it. Let's get started. So here is the ink on a colouring card. You can see it is a sort of blue-grey. I think it leans more to the grey than the blue, but there is definitely blue in it. It's lovely. It's got it's a nicely sort of saturated ink, and this is actually one of the first Atramentis inks I tried. I got a sample of it years ago, and really enjoyed it. And then went to get a bottle, and the retailer here in Australia was out of it, and I've had a couple of samples since, but really glad to be to have access to a bottle of it now, because it is a really beautiful ink and an ink I really enjoy. And we start with it today on Tom River paper. This is 68 GSM Tom River, the good old stuff we know and love. I had it in two pens, the TWSBI Go Extra Fine and the TWSBI Go Broad, as are my sort of standard for ink reviewing. As you can see here, once again, very nice, rich swab there. It's got a tiny little bit of that sort of red copper sheen popping there, but you don't get a lot of that in the writing. But lovely sort of rich blue-grey sort of colour there. Let's talk about these 5 points. So it is made in Hardert in Germany, and Atramentis is a basically family-run company who make the ink in small batches to exacting conditions, and you know, taking things like the quality of the dyes and things into really high account, which is really appreciated. I said the color is fog gray. As I said, what they do is they take, when they make these lines of inks, like this politics line, or in this case the science line, they use inks from their lineup and match them with personalities in that industry. As I said, it's from the science line, and that line also includes people like Marie Curie, Copernicus, Charles Darwin, Gutenberg, Christopher Columbus, and Thomas Edison. So there's a really cool range of personalities that are covered. You know, and for instance, the Marie Curie is a bright green ink, which I think is just absolutely perfect. Atramentis ink is generally very affordable. It's not super cheap, but it is affordable, and I think you get quality ink for it. I said it's a beautiful, rich grey. I think it's actually, this colour is absolutely stunning. It's a grey, almost blue grey, that leans into, like, some companies would put this as a blue-black. So it covers a really lovely range of colours, you know, in this writing, but it has really lovely personality. Okay, let's talk about the performance. I've said it has fair to average performance on low-end paper. You'll see this in a bit. There is feather and bleed, but you will get that from any ink. But this doesn't stand out as particularly aggressive. I'd put this really bang in the middle of what to expect on that kind of paper. It's got good wetness and flow, and excellent saturation. It's got a slower dry time, 2 seconds and then 20 seconds here as the two swipes, and you can see it's still pretty wet after 20 seconds. So it's got superb page contrast. So when it's darker shading, it is rich and dark and almost kind of like, well, this is a ink you could use professionally. But even in the lighter shading, it's still very readable, which is a credit to this ink, you know, being a grey and still having enough sort of depth of colour there. It's got excellent feel and general performance. It does everything it should do. It's a lovely ink. Okay, extras. Mid to low shade. It is a saturated ink. It is a wet ink. You will get some shading. You see, like on the S of superb there. You know, there's a bit of shading, but generally speaking, you get a lovely rich dark colour. There is minimal sheen. I do not see it in the writing. Even in a wet pen on Tom River paper, I do not see it. But as you can see in the swatch up there at the top, there's a little hit of it just around there. There's no shimmer, and it has some water resistance. Like, I put the water down here, And this is where I put the water down, and then a couple of seconds later, I dab it up, and you can see it has it has moved around a little bit, but the lines are still crisp. They're dark. They're very clear. Where I've hit it with the water brush pen here, so I draw the triangle, water brush pen, very little of it has moved around. So in that sense, it's not an ink you could use for like watercolor art in the same way that like Robert Oster inks move around on the page. You can also see in the chromatography here, there's a rich blue line left behind, and we get a sort of a lighter blue, and then we get the grays traveling up just a little bit up through the top there. If we look at the reverse of this page, nothing has come through. There is a ghosting, of course. This is Tom River paper, and this is a relatively dark ink. But nothing has come through, even in the swatch at the top there, where the water's gone down. It's performed incredibly well here on Tom River paper. Let's see it on some other paper now. We'll start here on the student notepad paper. It is a lighter color here. It is more washed out. But the lines remain relatively crisp. The feathering, I think, is actually kind of minimal. If you look at Thomas Jefferson above it, there's a bit more feathering there than there is here on the Isaac Newton color. If you look at the reverse of the page, as I said, I call this a medium kind of fair performance. Some perform better, some perform worse, but this, I think that's for me, that's very, very passable. And now here on the 80 GSM copy paper, once again, sort of more washed out, uniform, flat color, as you would expect. These are not fountain pen friendly papers. This is if you have to write on it at work, this is what you will get. So yeah, a tiny bit of feathering. And then if we look at the reverse, where I put down a bit more ink, yeah, a bit more comes through. But in the general writing, yes, it does come through. But I think it actually, as I said, for a non-fountain pen friendly paper, I would, like, if every ink could perform like this, I'd kind of be happy. And now we have it on Rhodier. You can see once again, it's nice and rich and dark in the swab. The writing, it's fairly good, nice and tight, a little bit of shading, stuff like that. You see where I put the water down? This is where I put the water down and let it dry. And with some inks, you just see them completely decimated. So there's no dabbing up, it's just dried. And I leave it to dry for a number of hours. This is still very readable and legible below where the ink has moved around on that water spot. This is good, it's nice to see. If we look at the reverse of that page, nothing has come through, as you would expect on Rhodier. Good quality fountain pen friendly paper, and also a really good quality ink. So time for a color comparison now. We have Isaac Newton or Fog Grey there. Now I just wanted to show it alongside a couple of inks just to put it into context. First is Diamine Earl Grey, which is a grey that leans sort of, I suppose, a more purple. So we see here, this is very blue, very, very blue. And something like Robert Oster Night, which is a very sort of more darker, earthier grey. You see just how blue that Fog Grey is. It's absolutely stunning. I put it here alongside Monteverde Blue Black because I wanted to show, like, there are inks in this blue black family that do run into this kind of color family, and yet that gets a lot darker. But this there's a lot of nice things going on in this color for sure. So now let's talk the business. The price for a 45 ml bottle like this one, €13.20, £8.29, $14 US, and $29.95 Australian. So these are prices I saw across a range of retailers, like sort of the vague sort of prices. It's affordable, particularly if you can get it at the European prices. At the Australian price, it's a little high, but you are getting a decent sort of quality ink from a somewhat boutique ink maker, which is really nice. Now, the score I have given this ink is 4.5 out of 5, which is a high score, particularly for me. And I have reasons for this. Firstly, I think the performance really stacks up. I'll just read this. Superb color, solid performer, some water resistance, and a really excellent, different everyday ink. That's my basic of why I've given it this score. But I think in terms of the performance of the ink, yes, there is a slightly slower dry time, but there is that little bit of water resistance. There is a nice little bit of shading, but it doesn't shade so heavily that you can't read it or that it's not clear. It's not heavy sheening ink. It is safe for fountain pens. It is, it performs relatively well on everyday paper. If you're using this in a drier, finer nib and you had to write on office copy paper, you would be okay. It's not going to totally destroy the paper. I think it's a beautiful color. I think it performs really well. It feels really lovely to write with this ink because it does have such a lovely flow. So yeah, 4.5 out of 5 for this ink. I've always loved this ink, and using it for this review and realizing once again just how beautiful this ink actually is. Yeah, 4.5. Maybe that's a little bit biased in my personal taste for the ink, but I think the performance stands up. So this was Atramentis Fog Grey or Isaac Newton there from the Science line of inks. Thank you for watching. I hope you found it interesting and useful. Please like and subscribe and hit the notifications button and all of that kind of stuff. If you've got products you think I should be looking at, or if you'd like to support the channel, please get in touch. I would love to hear from you. A big thank you to Atramentis for supporting this month by sending out inks for these reviews. Their support is incredibly appreciated. In the meantime, enjoy your inks, and I'll talk to you soon.